And now, Focus on the Pines with your host, Jack Barnes.
Hi, I'm Jack Barnes, and welcome to Focus on the Pines, where we bring you news, views, and interesting people from in and around Ocean Pines. Our guest today is new Ocean Pines General Manager Bob Thompson. Bob, thank you for taking time away from, I know what's a pretty busy schedule.
Sure, thanks for having me out.
Now, as far as I know, you're the first local that's been a general manager. And before we get into some of the nitty-gritty of the Pines, let's talk a little bit about your growing up on the shore. I understood you grew up in West Ocean City?
Yeah, right in Cape Isle White.
And you went through Ocean City Elementary and all the schools we know, right through Stephen Decatur?
Decatur, yes, sir.
Now, your parents, it was kind of interesting to me, I understand, were involved both in restaurants and construction?
Yes.
The restaurant's interesting to me. Maybe we might know they're not around anymore, but tell our viewers a little bit about what the restaurants, some of them may remember them.
Yeah, well, growing up, we had, Dad was in construction, did exterior coating, drive it, stucco work. Pyramid was one of the projects he had did years ago.
The big pyramid up there in the condo row.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So he's done a lot over there. And we owned a couple small restaurants in town. One was on 3rd Street, Hot Diggity Dog, and that's where we sold hot dogs of any shape, kind, whatever you wanted on it, we had. The other restaurant that Mom ran was that we owned was over in West Ocean City. It was the Depot. It was basically centered around train theme, but it was a breakfast, lunch type of
is that right?
Restaurant, yeah.
And that was near the Shantytown area?
When
where
you make
Shantytown
the right,
used to be?
Where Shantytown used to be. When you make the right to go into Shantytown, it was located right there on the right. So that was, I remember, flipping a lot of burgers and cooking a lot of eggs growing up.
Well, so you had a little bit of insight into the restaurant business, which, of course, is good as we all know, in Ocean Pines with some of the questions we're going about now with our restaurant business.
Sure.
After Stephen Decatur, you graduated and you went on to the Air Force?
I went in active duty Air Force, yes, and I spent 2 years in Alaska. And then from there I came back and I was stationed at Dover. Did my time at Dover, and when I got out, I put myself through college, which was at Warwick.
Mm-hmm. And that was in what field? Business management?
Business management, yes. And then from there, I stayed in the reserves, like the military, and over the next few years military, activated for Desert Shield, Desert Storm, deactivated. So I had a lot of military experience off and on active and reserve. In addition to that, after Warwick, I was putting myself through college, so I was I was working at Phillips Men's Shop, as you and I.
One of the icons of the Eastern Shore. Is very sad when Phillips clothing store
closed.
Yes,
in the old Salisbury Mall.
In the old Salisbury, isn't that right?
Yes.
That's right, I forgot about where that was.
Yeah.
I bet that really was good, though, in helping you get some expertise in dealing with people.
It was, and I tell you, it was a great way to make some extra money to pay for the books or to pay. My wife and I we were first married and we were living in Salisbury for just under a year, and before we moved back over here. And between that and then working for a bank, which was First Shore Federal, Mr. Leonard Brown hired me as a part-time teller, and hence
was that your first business entree into First Shore Federal?
Yes.
And you went in became a teller?
Part-time teller, and within a year, I had floated around all the branches, and then became full-time teller, and then did collections for a little while, and then got out and was on the street doing lending.
Now, when you got into lending, you really showed some of your skills, and you expanded to a point where you had quite a few offices under your control as well as people.
Yeah, well, I had the opportunity working with a lot of great folks locally from a lending perspective, a lot of great realtors in the area, a lot of great builders, and it worked for us. I had the opportunity to not only work for First Shore Federal, but it transitioned to First National, which Was everybody, everybody local knew First National. Was with them for 7 years, and then short term with Mason-Dixon Bank Shares, and that was Carroll County Bank, and it was their lending arm. And I had 3 offices down here, and I was recruited to First Mariner, where
they were out of Baltimore.
Out of Baltimore, yeah, great organization. I was with them for 7.5 years.
And then, from what I remember, you were finding yourself working these 70 to 80-hour work weeks because of all the offices. You were an extended time off and away from the family, and you sort of had to sit back and reevaluate and say, hey, this is great from a remuneration standpoint, but a little difficult. Do I really want to do this with the family? And you had to make a hard decision at that point.
I did. I was fortunate to have offices throughout the Mid-Atlantic, Maryland, Delaware, Virginia, into the Carolinas. And I worked with a lot of great managers, and one that was a little more senior in age to me was Mr. Shoemaker. And we spent a lot of time, I got to know each of the managers very closely. And a story, I think I shared this with you, was we were having dinner one night and talking about strategy moving forward for the next year. And Al kept mentioning his granddaughter, but he didn't talk much about his son at the time. And I asked him about that. I said, Al, how come you don't talk much about your son? And when he looked at me, he says, Bob, you know this business. I mean, you're working the hours that I work. You're just disconnected. He said, I didn't learn until later that it was very important to me to be, connected to the family at this level. And my wife and I have taken the time to do that with our granddaughter. It was that night it dawned on me that my priorities may have been askew. And in reflection, I decided to take a little turn in direction and focus more on the family. And I decided to change my priorities.
It's probably a good segue for you to tell our viewers a little bit about your family. You have 3 children?
3 children. Nicholas, who's 11. Bobby, who's 15. She'll be 17 this month. She's my senior at Decatur. Bobby's a sophomore. And Nicholas is in, I still say Berlin Middle, but it's Berlin Intermediate School now.
And your soulmate and responsible for all of these children is?
Missy.
Missy?
Yeah, she's a school teacher at Shaw Elementary School.
And I forgot about that. I see her over there occasionally because I work over there with of course, King.
Yes.
So you're a pretty busy family at the moment.
We are. We're starting the college, the driving to see the different colleges. With my 15-year-old son, Bobby, he's plays soccer for Decatur. JV, he's the captain of the team, and he also, I help coach our travel team. So we stay very busy right now.
I bet you do. How did you end up in Ocean Pines?
Well, growing up in Cape Isle of Wight, I mean, I knew, a lot of friends going, through school that lived here. And then when Missy and I, she first year out of college, took the job at Prince Street Elementary in Wycomico County and had applied here in Worcester County. So when she got the job here, we immediately relocated back here.
So you obviously must have liked the place, both of you.
Yes, very much. We've built 3 homes here, so I'd say, yeah, we like it a whole lot.
Now, you took this time off, and then you, with the family, you obviously reconnected, sort of took a look at your priorities, and thought that maybe getting in the financial planning business, was something that would work for both.
Yes, when you go back and look at it, a lot of what I was doing with the bank was developing business in a lot of different ways, to include financial advisors and planners co-locating with us in bank branches. And it was something I always had interest in. So I thought if I was making a change, this would be a good opportunity or a good time for me to do that. And so I moved, my financial experience into the investment side of the house. I went to work with Merrill Lynch, which was a good fit at the time, and that went very well, and met some great people. I had some great opportunities there. Spent about 1.5 years there, and then struck out on my own. With my financial company.
And then at one point you decided you'd run for a seat on the Ocean Pines Board of Directors.
I did. I've always been real connected here. I served on the Rec and Parks Committee until they told me I couldn't serve anymore because of our 6-year time limit. One of the projects I'm most proud about there is the community-built playground we did.
Yes.
So real excited. I've been real involved in the community at that level. was on part of the comprehensive planning years ago here in Ocean Pines. So, I have a lot of ties here. And then running for the board seemed to make sense. And it goes to my priority list of my family and then reconnecting to my community, which I wasn't able to do when I was on the road every day.
And suddenly an opportunity came up to run for a seat in the county commissioner, which you were doing, but then out of the blue comes a unique opportunity to be the general manager at Ocean Pines. Was that sort of a surprise at the time? Did it sort of be able to slide into the people talking to you about it? How did it kind of come about?
As everyone knows, that was a whirlwind. A lot of things were happening at the time. When I was, I'd chosen to run for county commissioner because I wanted to have impact on my community. And
Sure.
I felt that was the best way to have that impact. No thoughts of general manager or ever being in that position at the time. I certainly appreciated the opportunity when the past board presented it to me, but it took a lot of soul searching and trying to decide what I wanted to do. I knew it was going to put a wrinkle in the election plan. I knew some of the questions that would come up. But my whole thing's, from then and it still is now, is having impact and favorable impact. And when you sit back and you weigh it and you look at it, I can't think of a better way to have, the right type of impact than as a general manager of our community. So it was a good fit, good transition.
And it's unique because you come from a little different background than most of our GMs in the sense that we're sort of coming out of the municipal field. You're coming out of a business background.
Yes.
Did you find that represented a little more of a challenge than you thought, or do you think it's an advantage?
I have to think it's an advantage because I know that Ocean Pines is full of amenities, but I think having a little more business approach, certainly in today's economic times, having that business background, I think, is going to be beneficial, especially when we're looking at some of the deficits, we're looking at some of the facilities. We have 40-year infrastructure that really, needs some attention. A lot of it's going to be driven by the dollars. I think looking at it from a financial standpoint, from a business standpoint, makes a lot of sense right now.
And also, I assume that coming in as GM, you're coming in as someone who's lives in the community, knows the community, been involved on committees in the community, been involved in whether it be fundraising for the children's park, whatever. You're intimately involved, which I would think would give you a little different and positive perspective as a general manager.
I would like to think so. I think being here over 20 years, being involved with the committees, being involved with so many great people here in the Pines, I think it does have its advantages. It certainly gives me a solid foundation to work from. So I'd like to think it does.
Now, I know from talking with you, you're a multitasker. You're willing to take on a myriad, which probably can make other people stand back a little bit. What? You can do this? You've already moved, I understand, your offices in the administration building. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Get a little closer to the action?
Well, you know what? Just for me, I believe in from a leadership perspective, be out front. So for me, it made sense to move from the very back corner of the building, which, quite frankly, the last 3 or 4 GMs have been there, to the getting out front. I see people as they come through the door. I try to be engaging and accessible to everybody, and it seems to be working. You often hear in the papers, and certainly when a lot of times you hear in most communities, I believe, across the country, you hear negative. Negative seems to spin or sell or those type of things. It's amazing to me when you sit back and I analyze day by day how things are going, the amount of positive that people don't see from I have never met the person, and they brought in and dropped off a leadership book at my office one day, compliments of, and it just those type of little special things that people do here in the community that are often unseen. I show up one day, I have a big candy jar full of candy, welcoming to the new position, and not all these people are people I personally met or know, but that's the type of community we live in, and we often miss that. And I've got to tell you, that's what for me has always been the drive. Just I like that level, and that's unfortunately that's often the we just don't cover that much. We don't see a lot of that. I was at a chamber function last night, as you know, and the unsung Unsung Hero Award went to Ron Fisher, and you sit back and think of how he interacts with the community and the things he does, but he is a low-key guy.
Sure.
It's that type, that's what makes up our community, and there's more of that, far more of that than any of the negative that comes out there. It's just, we just don't get to see it as much as we'd like to.
Of course, Ocean Pines is known for strong opinions, and it gets emotional, and you have 14,000 of these opinions out there, and half of them are not full-time residents, so you really have to stay alert, and also try to stay on track, I guess, and not get derailed when you're involved in issues. What do you see now as far as your biggest challenges moving ahead?
Oh, they have to be financial.
You mean our favorite topic, assessments?
Wow, assessments. And you know what, that's probably a great question. Again, going back to the infrastructure issue, we all know that our infrastructure has been in place, primarily at the facilities, 30, 40 years, and it needs attention. I mean, the yacht club is the hot topic that everyone looks at right now. You know, the question comes in, what work really needs to be done there? Is it a renovation? Is it a rehab? Do we make do with what we have? All these questions are coming up, and if we had unlimited funds, I could imagine, you know, we could tear it down and rebuild something identical with all the latest. We could do something small. There's so many things if we had unlimited funds, but we don't. And quite frankly, our households don't. Everyone's felt the crunch, you know, financially. So we have to be a little more prudent and pay a little more attention to how we're going to make these things happen. Because quite frankly, we need to put some money into our facilities, some of our infrastructure. Unfortunately, timing is not very good, but the fact of the matter is we need to do something. So how we do it and what we do, and taking care to do it in an appropriate way right now, I think that's our biggest challenge. And it's not so much, as I find as I'm talking with people, it's not that people mind doing it, it's just clearing up and helping them understand what the focus is and why it's important and what the actual needs are. Because we have a great community with a lot of people that are willing to give and understanding of the economics, and they don't mind, you know, paying for that, but what they want it to be in an appropriate level.
I think you're right, and not understanding sometimes. I also find that with people that when they're explained the whole issue, they sometimes, oh, I didn't realize that.
Sure.
That makes sense, and that's why I guess transparency is important. Really, I've seen a big positive change in that with the board, and I think that's important. Some of the issues I thought would blow up never blew up. Even when they posted salaries, you know, once they got posted, it was not a big issue. It's when people are speculating that we often have emotions take over. Now, you did mention outsourcing. Maybe you can give our viewers just sort of what the update is on outsourcing, since we've been reading a little bit that we were talking about the yacht club, golf, or whatever. Right. What's an update, as much as you're able to give us, relative to the outsourcing issue?
Latest update is the board is actively pursuing opportunities with Casper Golf for the outsourcing of the country club. When I say outsourcing, one of the things we're looking at is really we're bringing in management support to help us manage the country club and the golf operations more effectively. What the board has decided to do was take a half step back for any outsourcing strategies or management contracts with the yacht club or yacht club or the beach club, to allow us to continue to operate those, and you know, looking at ways to make some improvements there without actually exercising the opportunity to go outside and hire a management company to come in and help us. With the introduction of Billy Casper Golf, who quite frankly manages 120 golf courses. They have the depth and the breadth, the knowledge to run those efficiently. The feeling is that having them step in and help us do it better here would bring a lot of value, not only today but in the future. So that's the path we're on.
So it looks like we're heading towards outsourcing for golf. Yes, and yacht club, making some improvements and pursuing that, and you'll have memories of Hot Diggity Dog and OC Diner to sort of push that along a little bit. And I think we do have a good guy in Joe Reinhardt over there, and I think if things can get organized in a way that can concentrate on that facility, hopefully we'll see some positive improvements.
Let's hope so.
Joe and I always have a dream that our amenities can pay completely for our assessments if we ever get them to the point where they're run correctly, you know?
Well, you say that, and that's where, everybody uses the term amenity. Truth of the matter is, revenue neutral should be our focus. Where whatever the expense to operate it, we have enough revenues generated to offset that, and then ultimately, possibility of generating some revenues, bring some profits to the table, so we don't have the increase in assessments. I know that's always the sticky part. Was it an amenity? Is it a business? What is it exactly? Truth of the matter is, if we operated some of our facilities, some of our operations in a more business-like manner, where we could drive some revenues through that amenity or that operation, we would have less need to increase assessments to cover some of the costs. And I think ultimately, that's where my experience and background is going to help us, is by actually, going down each line of business and creating some opportunities that maybe we haven't had in the past to generate some of those revenues, and therefore, take a better look and create some opportunities where we don't have to increase assessments.
Two other areas, Bob, that I can think of where there's been some areas of concern. One is appearance of properties in the Pines, and the second is assessments that have gone unpaid. Any comments on those two areas?
Oh yeah, two tough topics. As you know, with the economic conditions the way they are right now, when you're looking at property values, the deterioration of some of the properties maybe surrounding folks that either can't afford their rent anymore, can't afford their mortgage, houses going to foreclosure. That's not just Ocean Pines. That's impacting across the country. What we're trying to do, and I give Carrie Nelson and the Public Works, the whole crew, CPI and everybody, we're trying to really take a strong look from the properties and how or what what we're allowed to do from a legal standpoint, and B, what's the right answer from a moral standpoint. Not be overly aggressive where people are struggling, try to work with them. And that also leads into the foreclosure and or lack of assessments. It's a tough time for folks. So what we need to do is the board had embraced, a foreclosure, or I say foreclosure because that's the word that keeps coming up in the news, but really a way to collect on overdue assessments, which impacts all of us, but to do it in a prudent way and using moral judgment, not just beating people up, trying to find a way to help them, establish a payment strategy if they're behind for one reason or another and just economic conditions haven't allowed them to stay caught up. What's the way we can work with them and help them get caught up without, taking real, stern action with the court. And at the same time, we have people that, quite frankly, have abused that. They just figure Ocean Pines doesn't have the ability or the bite to go and make those collections. And we're trying to do that in the appropriate way.
Well, I'll tell you, it's been very interesting. Do you have any final comments you'd like to make to the property owners?
No, I'm just excited to be here. I really appreciate the board giving me the opportunity to be here. I'm excited about the possibilities moving forward. We have a lot ahead of us, and I believe we can have a lot of positive impact.
Well, we want to thank you again, and I know you have a lot of support, and we certainly wish you well in the challenges ahead. It sounds like it's going to be exciting, something you enjoy. I think it's great to have someone that has been so involved with Ocean Pines and has a tremendous background to come in and face these challenges. And on behalf of all our viewers and property owners in Ocean Pines, again, we wish you well. Bob Thompson, General Manager of Ocean Pines. I'd like to thank you all. This is Jack Barnes for Focus on the Pines.
And now, Focus on the Pines with your host, Jack Barnes.